Hello again, fellow druids. I want to revisit the humble Woldwatcher in a model review today. I talked about it way back when. I've probably brushed on it sometime over the course of a few updates, but we're going to go through and just talk really quickly about it again, go over its stats and the like. So. As I said, Woldwatcher is a Circle Light War Beast. It is Speed 5, Strength 8, Mat 6, Rat 5, Defense 10, Armor 17, has no command stat. It is Fury 2. Has Advanced Deploy. It is a construct, has Pathfinder. It's on a medium base, of course. Threshold has no threshold. Wolds have no threshold. It has a ranged attack that is range 10, rate of fire 1, power 12, damage type magical, called Elemental Strike, and then it has 2 rune fists that are half-inch, power strength 12, damage type magical, open fists, and it has 24 boxes, distributed mostly evenly, but a little bit lower on the mind. Its animus is Earth's Blessing, which is a 1-cost range self, lasts for a round, not offensive. Spellcaster can be pushed, knocked down, made stationary, or moved by a slam, lasts for a round. The Woldwatcher has the all-important ability Stone Form, which is a model forced to use this anytime during its activation. For 1 round, or until it advances, it gains +4 armor. Base defense reduced to 5, and it's automatically hit by melee attacks. And then he has Fertilizer on all of his offensive attacks, both the range and in melee. And that says, when a living or undead model is boxed by an attack made by this weapon, center a 3-inch AoE on the boxed model, and then remove that model from play. The AoE is a force that remains in play for 1 round. Real quick, and its point cost 8 is field allowance unlimited. And that's important. So when we went through the Wold changes, I may have touched on this, but the changes that were made to it was, it used to be Mat and Rat 5, went up to Mat 6. Used to be 9 points, went down to 8. And otherwise was not changed. It's changed since Mark II. I'm actually not even going to go over that because I think that was sort of a point of consternation for a lot of Circle players, and because of the changes. And I think it's important, especially now that we're 2 years into this edition, almost, to really just not, it's interesting for historical reasons, but it's not something we should dwell on. So, why would you play the Woldwatcher? Well, for one thing, he is pretty much like the point-for-point tankiest thing we have access to. For 8 points, I often talk about how Scarsfell's Griffins at defense 15 with evasion are pretty hard to kill, and this guy is way harder to kill, almost categorically. And the reason for that is Stone Form. So he has 2 power 12s instead of a 12 and 2 11, so I would say the Scarsfell for the point for point probably is going to outdamage him most of the time, and that's also a Fury 3 base versus Fury 2. But Woldwatchers have Stone Form, which means on their own, we didn't bring a caster yet. We're not even talking about possible synergies, although there are some we will talk about. And it is armor 21 on its own. He spends 1 Fury, becomes armor 21. That is a substantial armor value. Armor 21 is more armor than most heavies. It is more armor than almost every light. Most of the lights and heavies that get to armor 21 on their own have a shield to do so. This is not a shield. There is no center. Now, of course, it's a trade-off of automatically being hit, or having very low def if we're talking about ranged attacks, so there is some trade-off there. But they are incredibly tanky. And some things that will go missed as you look at this, too, are Advanced Deploy is actually really, really huge. This model frequently, you're going to be able to move up in Stone Form pretty much in any match, because you're already going to, basically every single scenario, you're going to be in the scenario zone that you want to be in, or at least approaching it. Not the far ones necessarily, but all of the ones you want to defend. So he's gonna be excellent at doing that. Earth's Blessing is a great animus when you need it. With Bradigus, they get to do it for free every turn, so if you're playing him. It's very instrumental to making sure you keep Bradigus safe, or you keep from time to time a Kruger staying safe from that's going to be important. It itself, just like not being able to be made stationary, is a very big deal. You may even need it for somebody like Baldur 2, who, like I said, you know, Earth's Roots of the Earth does most of what Earth's Blessing does, but it doesn't, for example, stop stationary. And you may need to stop station. You know, you may have a match where that's important. It has RFP attacks, which in a lot of matchups isn't really going to matter, but they're there. And then you also are making a force, which again, in a lot of matchups isn't really going to matter, but they're there. And it's just another little thing that's going to disrupt your opponent, get in the way if he doesn't have Pathfinder Troops, although I'm starting to feel like everything has Pathfinder Troops. It's going to be in the way. If they have Warjacks, they generally are not going to want to deal with stuff like that. At the armor value that they start at, usually you're sending a heavy to kill it, or a heavy's worth of commitment. If we add in some of the even more defensive approaches, and I'm specifically thinking of Baldur 2 in this case, but Baldur 2, these things go up to armor 24. And I've done the math, but the amount of things required to kill one of them is absolutely substantial. I played a game recently with Baldur 2 into Trolls, and it took Mortality and Rage for a Mauler to trade pretty favorably into it. And a Mauler costs like 15 points, and this guy costs 8. Counterpoint 2 is now with the addition of the Blackclad Stone Shaper. You can, in a pit, it's beneficial. Like everything that thing does is great for like every wold, and this is no exception. The repair is amazing when you have something this hard to kill. The Fury management is really good because they're only Fury 2, and you may sometimes have to max them out, and this way you can have more Fury management and sometimes make sure you're leaving yourself a transfer target. And Earth's power is actually very, very important for them. Power 12 is a good number. Going up to power 14 now means that you're going to do work into targets you wouldn't really expect to. Now, this isn't necessarily going to be your first target for that ability, but it is a really important ability nonetheless. Further, if you take them with someone like Bradigus, now you can actually crank their damage up to power 17 on its own if you need to, and that's really key. One of the things I would say, though, is 1017 is actually a pretty poor stat line. They're not just gonna like fold over and die, but like it being hit as easily as they do, and 17 is just like not quite that far up. So basically what I'm saying is if you don't stone form, make sure that you're incredibly safe, or that you've calculated that if it dies, it dies, right? Like you traded it for what you wanted to trade it for, and you're fine with it. You're gonna want to stone form much of the time with them. Even when it feels like it's not favorable, because you're going to cause your opponent... They're so defensive versus offensive that the more frustration they can cause your opponent most of the time is going to be better than the trade-off of a little bit, like, of the one more attack's worth of damage. Maybe not always, but much of the time I think that's what you're going to see. And that goes doubly for someone like Baldur 2, who's already stacking armor and wants to stack more armor. Even with Bradigus, though, they become very tanky. And with him, it's interesting. Make sure that you judiciously use Earth's Blessing. Sometimes you want to use it purposely so his feet doesn't push them away, and sometimes you want to make sure you don't use it so that his feet does push them. Just things to keep in mind. The RFP is very key. There's some lists you may want to throw it in just for that, to add that in, and things like that. So we'll keep this video short, too. That's the Woldwatcher. Mat 6 is actually really helpful too. I didn't go over that, but being up that +1 mat is really good. That's the Woldwatcher. Not a ton to say on him, but I did want to revisit him. I think as you're looking at Bones lists, which a lot of people are right now, that I would definitely consider taking a look at this guy again. So, anyways, yeah. As always, joining the conversation on Twitter, Facebook, Discord, anywhere you find me. If you like the show, please feel free to like or subscribe. Leave any comments here as you'd like, and thanks for tuning in.